Hello, Ken. Welcome to the Hidden Center, where we wrestle with monsters, lions, and men. I'm Dennis Simone, a lover of wisdom, words, and wonders, much like yourself. I think you and I discovered the work of John Vervaeke and D.C. Schindler around the same time in our life. I had just graduated college when I discovered Vervaeke, and I was lucky enough to meet D.C. Schindler when he came to visit my university my senior year. A professor of mine had recommended one of his books to me, and it sent me down a rabbit trail of amazing book after amazing book. For me, Plato's Critique of Impure Reason has been a life-transforming book. I'm lucky enough to be family friends with D.C. Schindler. My dad and he went to school together when they were both getting their master's degree, and I'm now following in my dad's footsteps, getting a degree this fall at the institution that he got his degree, studying under D.C. Schindler. So I could not be more excited for where I'm headed. And I hope that someday you and I can chat about all that we've both learned, both from D.C. Schindler and from John Vervaeke, who I know you admire Schindler's work as much as I do, but you've said that while Jesus is, what's the phrase, is from Kierkegaard, that I follow Jesus, but Socrates is my I follow Jesus, but Socrates is my teacher. You like to say you follow Jesus, but Vervaeke is your teacher. And believe me, I get it. I've been listening to Vervaeke's work for a while now. His just sheer intellectual honesty and openness to beauty and truth and goodness. He's a Platonist in the best sense of the term, and he makes use of the Christian Platonists, and he treats them respectfully, and he learns from them in a way that's so humble and inspiring. He's helped me so much to form my own ecology of practices and to set my life in good order, as I know he's helped you. It's been fascinating to me as a watcher of the little corner of the internet that you and Vervaeke and Pajot are a part of, to see your own journey as you've been interacting with Vervaeke's work. Early on, it seemed like you were still pretty confident in the Christian claims, even in the Creed, claiming that God became man in Jesus Christ. More recently, you've become, it seems, less confident in those claims, and believe me, I get it. I've had my periods of doubt. The incarnation is a hard teaching. It's a hard saying. I really liked what you said recently in your second video with Schindler, Pajot, and Vervaeke, that whenever people ask you directly, did God become man, you like to say, well, I don't know what those terms means. If I were to say, I know that God became man, I would have to know what God was and what man was. And in all intellectual humility, you have to say, you don't know. And thank you for your honesty. I've been in the same boat. Not just with the incarnation, but even worse with the Trinity. Like, one God, but three persons? Like, seriously, how does anyone make sense of that? I've been lucky to have good teachers who've helped me to wrestle with those monstrous ideas. But I want to interrogate in good Socratic and, if I dare say it, Vervaekean fashion, your question. How do we know what God is and what man is? Well, I want to ask you, what is knowledge? What is the know in knowing God and man? What kind of knowledge would we need to have in order to answer the question, did God become man? It's a big question. I want to make a proposal to you, and if you find it interesting, or if you find the question interesting, I would love to have you on my channel to discuss it. Here's the proposal. I think that knowledge has three, and using a term that's relevant to both of us, it has three main relevant portions. I would call them understanding, judgment, and practice. So what are those three terms? What do I mean by them? Understanding, in logic, is the understanding of basic terms. It culminates in definition. So what is a man? Maybe a man is a rational animal. Maybe he's a featherless biped, if we want to use Plato's definition. The interesting thing to me about understanding is that in order to get the definition, you need to pick out the relevant genus, and species. So man is an animal, species, sorry, genera, not species. Man is a rational animal. Animal is the genera. Rational is the specific difference. So that is an instance of relevance realization. And honestly, if you and I could chat with Vervaeke at some point, I want to make the case to him that what the classical tradition going from Plato and Aristotle down through Aquinas and Scotus means by understanding might just be what he means by relevance realization. It would be a fascinating connection if it's true. I have a book right over here, Lonergan's Verbum, where he discusses understanding in great detail. He has another book called Insight. It's even more depth, and he makes the case that understanding just is the recognition of what is relevant in the data that we have before us. So there's a good chance that understanding just is relevance realization. So relevance realization or understanding is the first component of knowledge. Let's jump to the third component, practice. When we know something, I don't think we truly know it until we live it. It's not just that you need to live it in order to prove that you know it. It's that you actually come to know a thing much more truly by living it, by embodying it. The person who has the practice of chastity knows the beauty of sexuality far more intimately than the person who has not the practice of chastity. Same with the person of the scientist, the biologist. The biologist who lives and practices biology understands far more than he ever would have learned from a textbook. So those are two components of knowledge: understanding or relevance realization, and practice, living it out. But then there's this second one in the middle that dialogues between the two that I call judgment. Judgment is usually described as a proposition. A man is alive. Propositions, and I know that you and Vervaeke have a lot of discomfort, let's say, with propositional knowledge. The proposition has become a tyrannical possession in the West for the last 500 years. Descartes, Kant, Hegel, as much as we have a lot to learn from these people, they place judgment, propositional knowledge, at the center of their sense of knowing to great detriment. If you don't have the understanding, the relevance realization, the anti-bullshit practices that Vervaeke is so insistent upon, your judgments have nothing to stand on. I'm concerned, though, that the way that Vervaeke talks about this, and again, I don't just want to be a talking head criticizing the man. I would love to have a conversation with him in which we could dial in on some of these difficult ideas. I think that propositions are starting to get a bad rap. A proposition is not reducible to verbal content. When I know that something exists, it grips my mind and my whole being. When I realize that 2 + 2 does in fact equal 4, that grips me. When I learned the Pythagorean theorem and I was able to understand what the relationship was between the two sides of the triangle and the long side, it blew my mind. And it wasn't just an act of understanding, and it wasn't just a lived practice, it was a judgment. It was a proposition, if you want to call it that, but it was contact with reality. And I know you and I agree that contact epistemology is very important. I think that it's not just in relevance realization or perspectival or participatory knowing that we get contact with reality, nor is it just in practice that we get contact with reality. I actually think it's in those darn propositions, those amazing judgments, those amazing statements, this is, that we have some of the most intense contact with reality. And so if we limit knowledge to understanding and practice, as I sometimes think Vervaeke is tempted to do, he recognizes the need for scientific knowledge, but he seems to exclude it from wisdom. But I think that judgments, knowledge, statements of what is, I think these are part of wisdom. So if we exclude judgments, we can make judgments about things that we don't fully understand the concepts of. I suspect. I may not know what a man is, but I know that man is not God, or at least that I'm not God. I don't know exactly what God is. I don't know exactly what I am, but I know I'm not God, and that's a judgment. It's a judgment call, as it were. It's a proposition, and it's one that I know with great confidence, and I hope you know it too. It would be difficult to have a conversation with someone who couldn't confidently say, I'm not God. But then there's Jesus, who says, I am. Even just saying the phrase freaks me out a little bit. There's a little bit of I'm enough a part of the Jewish tradition that saying the divine name causes me to tremble, even quoting it. But Jesus says it. He says, I am, which is a judgment. I am. But he also says, I'm the Son of Man. Is there a concept of knowledge we could have that would allow us to know whether or not that statement was true, to know whether or not God became man? Let's find out together. Come join me on the Hidden Center.